Marriage is tough today. I looked up some statistics and it says that people are waiting much later in life to marry. Um, Average age is a male is 30 years old, average female is 28. They said the numbers are up with people living together, choosing not to get married at all. And the average marriage those that divorce, the ones that divorce are 8 years, is how long they're lasting. So marriage has had a tough time, but statistically speaking, they said there's a slight decline in divorce, but I don't know if that's because people aren't getting married. I don't know. So some of those other things impact that, but it's just a slight decline, and that's 41% of marriages today are ending up in divorce. And any percentage in that is sad, really. Um, and most of y'all, again, y'all know me and know that I speak from not from a point of judgment. I've been married before. Everything I've learned it by screwing up and doing it the wrong way. So anything that I ever share and teach or Lori too is that school of hard knocks. We've probably done it the wrong way is the reason we're trying to tell you how not to do it. Um, but one of the things that Laurie and I have talked about within our own relationship and people that we talk to, we've been coaching couples for 10 years now since we really started formally helping couples in their who are
Having
in,
issues.
having issues, thank you, having issues and stuff. And we've talked to some couples who's having some really tough stuff. And we've talked to some who just want to improve their lives. But one of the things that Laura and I found in our own lives, and it's true for so many others, is that we don't have anything to pull from. We don't have, a lot of folks don't have examples in which to go off of to have a marriage and to have a relationship. Uh, Me, for example, my parents brushed things under the rug. I didn't see them. I saw some arguments and I saw some stuff. I was part of some arguments, but really how to do marriage and disagree correctly and in loving way, I didn't have that.
Yeah, I mean I think it's a thing of we've discussed it before. It's difficult sometimes because, even if your parents were m- mine's not a great situation either. My parents both it was a rough they argued quite a bit. But if you did, even if your parents didn't, or they didn't argue at all, or whatever, you may not have gotten the good way to have a disagreement and work through something. Seeing it from a great way to do that. I never experienced that. I don't know that I ever saw any, I don't even know if I ever saw any, family members, that kind of thing, to where I knew that, oh, okay, they're having a disagreement and they're working this out and, talking to each other, not screaming at each other and, throwing things or doing things like that. So I think it's
Yeah. Yeah, because my go-to is always to disappear. Yeah, that's what I do. I disappear. I don't know if y'all seen the Simpsons and I don't watch the Simpsons, but you can't help but see a clip every now and then. But Homer, he kind of disappears into the bushes and when he's wanting to hide. That's what I do. I mean, when huge conflict, or I go to the other side and it's all on, and I'm pulling out all the guns and the weapons and I'm taking you out. I go one to the other. I never had a middle ground and knowing how to discuss things without going away, you know? So, so what do you do in those situations? That's the question. If you don't have anything to pull from, and most couples I think that we have talked to, especially those who have been in they find themselves in a tough place, that's where they're finding themselves at. They don't know how to argue. They don't know how to disagree.
And a lot of times what they'll do is as well is we tend to, and what we found over the years is that people tend to just not discuss anything at all, period.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it's going to be that, okay, we're fixing to discuss, I need to bring this up or we need to talk about this. Well, I don't want to talk about it because it's going to we're going to get in an argument over this because we disagree on it. So what people will do is not talk about it at all
Yeah.
and leave it, which doesn't help anything because the issue is still there. It's just now we're not talking about it,
Mhm.
but we know it's there and we know all the emotions around it.
Hmm. And it's like a it's like a wound, splinter. It's going to fester. It's still there, whether you're talking about it or not.
Yeah.
You got to get it out. And that was some of our problems. Our whole coaching business and everything that we do came out of our problems. And that was one of our challenges was we just didn't talk about stuff. It would blow up, we go our separate ways, and we come back together, pretend like nothing happened. But it did. So that's one of the things we want to answer before we get off of this today is give people an idea on how to approach tough conversations. The other things that we've seen, and Laurie talks about this a lot, and we talk about it with our couples, is a lot of the challenges that we face is expectations of the other person. And those expectations, something we have found is we don't even know we have those expectations. All we know is we're mad at them. But we had this internal expectation of that person to behave a certain way, to do something a certain way, or to respond in a way. And then when we don't get or they don't do what we expected them to, then all kind of misconceptions come in, misperceptions, and our minds start running down those wrong roads of wrong beliefs and untruths.
Hmm. Yeah, because I mean, we've talked about this before. I have this thing of, and this is not a couple kind of a thing, but it could be. I go and I watch Survivor with my friend, and I have this thing that when I leave, it's dark outside. So, and this applies to anyone. If I'm leaving your house, I don't know, I just have this internal expectation that you wait to shut the door until I'm in my car.
We are going to record this and put
Yeah,
it out there for
I know.
everybody. So,
She will know now. Hannah, don't shut the door until I go in. I'm in my car. So I just have this thing, and it's an internal thing, and I guess it's something where I'm like, you need to make sure I'm okay, that I don't get raped out here in your driveway, kind of thing. So it's just, but a lot of times we have those expectations that we've grown up with or that we've seen, and we expect people to do something or believe that they should do something, and then they don't. And we're like, well, why aren't you doing that? I don't know why you wouldn't do that because we have the expectation.
yeah, and then some of those expectations comes from, again, the way we were raised. It's common. Um, I was using an example with a couple that we were talking to the other day, and that their life they're struggling with the drinking thing. Okay, do we drink? Do we not? There's been some challenges within that family, and for Laurie and I, her culture that she grew up in, there was a lot of drinking. I mean, it was just part of their life, part of their family. It's what they did. So growing up now, she's here at this point in her life, and it's no big deal. For me, I was raised in a teetotal home. It was a sin. If you said Jack Daniels in my house, you were going to hell. So it was you just didn't talk about alcohol in my house. It was just horrible. It was a horrible thing because my dad was raised by an alcoholic family and all kinds of crap that went on there. So it was just, so as we've grown up, we've got these two different perspectives on alcohol. She don't see a big deal about it, and I still have struggles. Should I? Shouldn't I? Is it right? Is it wrong? Is it biblical? Is it not biblical? All these things. And I'm not even here to talk about is alcohol right or wrong. I'm here to talk about that that's how you're growing up can formulate expectations and things in your mind that, without you even realizing it, without you even knowing it. Um, so those unspoken expectations, and then the expectations that we are not even aware of sometimes, causes arguments. And a place that Laurie and I got to, and we're going to talk about it more here in a minute when we start talking about how to address tough situations. We got to place when we got our marriage back on the road, we decided to talk about everything right then and there. And Laurie's gotten very good about that. She used to really stuff it down. I stuff it down. But now it'll be funny. She'll walk off from something. I'll say something, do something that irritates her. She'll walk off, and then I'll just hear in the next room, I'll hear, nope, I ain't gonna do it. I'm talking about it. She turns around, that pissed me off. Uh, so so she's learned that we're going to talk about it and we're going to get it out on the table right now. Um, Now, do I think that right now is always the right answer? No, right now is not always the right answer. If it's a very volatile moment, if it's a sensitive subject, um, right now when the flames are burning and they're high, it might not be the perfect time to do it. Wait till things calm down. But the key is to get it out. Don't sit on it.
Just like I said before, I mean, what we tend to do a lot of times is that subject, whatever it is or whatever somebody did to tick you off, is that thing of, okay, I'm just not going to say anything.
Hmm.
And then we tend to think about it later and we still are ticked off about it. And we're going, okay, well, I'm still kind of angry about that, but I'm not saying anything to him. And we tend to play things and then we get frustrated with the person. So the next time they do something, we don't say anything. We get a little more frustrated, a little more aggravated, and if we continue to do that, we can build up an anger towards the person, a resentment towards the person, and then you're headed down a road that's just not a good road because you're not talking and you're resenting the person and everything that they do at that point, you're pointing, you know, it's like they can't do anything right at that point because you're pinpointing everything they do. So,
Zach, give me a second here. I'm going to share a screen with y'all. I hope if it works here. Um, you're do pretty good with tech. There it is. And I'll share it with you here in a momento. I'll go ahead and get it up. How about that, Crew? Sir,
You can't hear me.
I can't, not hear nothing yet.
Can you hear me now? I apparently have to lean forward.
Yeah.
Okay. So I was going to add that it's not just um, the time, it's also the place when you have a discussion. It's important not to have that discussion where you're in public, usually with your family,
mhm.
especially if it's about your family,
Yeah.
um, or tangentially about your family. So I think that's an important thing too.
Oh, absolutely.
Great. Yeah.
And
Go
and
ahead.
if you have to have a conversation, not to have the body language of we've got to have a conversation, but I ain't talking to you now.
Right, exactly. 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 Because we can all, I mean, we all know, where, if I'm walking off or I'm like, doing the thing, it's like you're fully aware that I'm angry and whatever about it. So it is that control of, okay, we do now have a conversation on this. Now's not the time to do so, but we will do that later.
And that's a great point. I'm glad you brought that up, Jerry, because it's something I'm not always great at, but I have definitely gotten better at, as is correcting my spouse in front of people all the time. Um, that humiliates your spouse, your significant other, if you constantly correcting them in front of other people. And especially for men want respect, right? And when the wife comes along and says, "No, you're wrong, that's not right," da 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 da, men start to feel very resentful toward that kind of stuff. So correcting people, now, I mean, you're going to, you say, well, you're going down 199 and it was 820. No, that was 820, babe. That's not a big deal, but you know what I'm talking about. I've known couples who the guy or the girl, they can't get anything out of their mouth before their spouse corrects them in front of everybody. And sometimes you just got to let it go. What does it matter if the car was blue and you said it was green? Let it go. Um, and the right time. And family, you mentioned family too, Jerry. That's one of the biggest things, and it's kind of going off the road a little bit from what you said, but talking about marriage in your personal relationship to family is a big no-no because you love your spouse. We love them. No matter how hard we fight, no matter what we say and what we do, we're going to come back, hopefully, kiss, hug, sing kumbaya. Our family members don't love our spouse as much as we do, and they'll hold on to those grudges. They hold on to everything.
And they remember the things and will be, have a little bit of a wall built up against, on the person because they've done whatever to that family member. So, it's like, oh, well, I don't know. We'll reserve judgment on this for later if he does something else.
And we have actually had clients who that pose a problem, that very situation right there pose a problem in their relationship years later because they moved on from their issue. There were things that was said, but they told their family what was said and the words that was used. And 5, 6 years later, their family's still holding on to that, and it's starting to cause a wedge in between their relationship because their family don't care to see that individual. They don't. They're cold to them when they do get together. So it's just a no-no. I'm really glad you brought that up, Jerry.
Yeah,
said that. That's an excellent point. The other thing is contract versus covenant marriage. This was a slide I was going to show you. This is a good stat here on why you need to work on your marriage and stay in your marriage. The divorce rate right now is 41%, but for those who go into the second marriage, 60 to 67%. And if there's a third marriage, 73% end up divorcing. And so to me, and I don't throw stones. Our third marriage right here, boom, no. Number 3.
For him.
For me, not her. She wants to make sure that's clear. Me, and I mean, if it weren't for the grace of God 10 years ago, I would have been in those statistics. I mean, God stepped in and did a miracle in our marriage, but I was headed right there for that third one. And one thing we learned through our counseling and our growth as a couple is that, and our counselor said this, he goes, you're going to build with someone. Mm-hmm. You're building a relationship. You're building that marriage. Well, I start over because the next person's going to bring their own trunk of junk, with it. And then plus you're bringing yours. So it's just piling on. So working on a relationship, working on the marriage is the best. Now, are there exceptions to that? Absolutely. You can't sit there and put it all in one big ball of wax and say nobody should ever be divorced. There's exceptions to the rule. But all in all, it's best to work on your marriage, keep building, and try to keep moving forward. Of course, if there's abuse, emotional, mental, physical abuse, addictions, all that kind of stuff, that's a whole different story. I think y'all understand what I'm saying. So here's covenant versus contract marriage. More couples that we were talking to, and even Lauri and I do it. We were out on the back porch the other day, and I had one of my mornings that I kind of didn't do much, you know. It was just one of the mornings I was just sitting around reading, doing my own thing, and she was buzzing around, and we finally landed on the back porch to chill. And I could tell by her body language, because Laurie does not have a poker face, she wasn't happy. She was talking to the dogs, but really talking to me. Yeah, I guess I'll get your water too, since I already got your food, and since I've already, made sure the house was straightened up and the bed was made, and she's talking to me, but the dogs.
Did you enjoy Facebook this morning?
Did you enjoy Facebook?
Good for you.
But then my reply was, so we've slipped into the contract marriage now, have we, honey? We're keeping score. And
my reply was, do we really want to go there? So, yeah.
So the covenant, which that's the way God designed, is the covenant marriage. Most everybody on the phone call knows this is that marriage is a spiritual thing. Marriage is a representation of the church's, the Christian's relationship with God. And we're supposed to mirror that and mimic that. That's what marriage is. And so, God, I just had a thought I was going to throw in there. I'll think of it in a minute. But so the covenant, what that looks like is grace. You always believe the best about your spouse. You embrace your spouse, who they are. You always recognize effort. You're very giving, and you're other focused, meaning not other people outside the marriage, other being your spouse, right? Whereas you look at the contract side, it's very legalistic, a lot of rules, a lot of conditions, always assumes the worst, whatever she or he did, that they had a
ulterior motive.
Ulterior motive. They were out to get you. They don't like you. They want to make your life miserable. You just tolerate your spouse. Very performance driven, very about myself, getting, what about me? What about me? Very self-focused and self-interested. And it's interesting, if we listen to ourselves sometimes, we can hear that contract coming out. We hear that contract mentality coming out when we start weighing things and, well, I did this, and you don't do this, you don't do that. That's contract. That's not covenant marriage. That's covenant relationship. All right. Work. There we go. So getting into how to think about this, there's two ways to approach when we hit these, I call them sticky points, when we hit these tough conversations that we have. Let me make sure I'm saying, all right, see, I do have notes, even though she told me, be casual with your conversation. I still have notes. So you can either think or you can sink. And thinking, as you walk through this it is a problem solving approach. Trouble hits. You want humility. You want to keep intimacy. You want to negotiate. And then obviously that's the key to transformation, which on the sink side, which is that contract side, very self-focused. You isolate yourself. Remember, I was talking about me. First thing I do is I disappear. I don't want to be around anybody. Don't talk to me. I don't talk about it. Get away.
Or in isolation too is also what I was talking about is we don't talk. Mm-hmm. You stop talking.
I'm cold.
You're like, I'm not talking to you now.
Mm-hmm. She's good at that, by the way. She's
super great at that.
The eye rolling.
I've perfected that.
She has perfected the eye rolling. If anybody needs any classes in eye rolling, Laurie can do it. It's like in slow motion, and it cuts right through you. I mean, it's a martial art, I believe. I believe you have a belt in that. And then, of course, that leads to negativity, and it's going to lead to destroying your marriage.
Especially when you continue in that thing. Because, you stop and, I'm a huge self-evaluator all the time and self-evaluating myself and going, okay, Laurie, what do you because I think we all can slip into the contract stuff a lot because we all get pretty self-focused sometimes. Well, because we're like, well, what about me? Well, I'm the one doing everything. And do I have to keep doing everything? Mentality, which is it's all about me. And, instead of serving, instead of thinking, because that thought process is he's doing it on purpose or she's doing it on purpose, like not helping me on purpose, when sometimes they're not even thinking that way.
And that leads to the marriage mediation thing that we do. The whole program is based on beliefs and truth. And I didn't make a slide for that, and perhaps I should have, just because I know some people are visual learners and stuff. So, but think about the ABC. And A is an activating event. You might want to write this down. A is the activating event. The thing that occurs that ticked you off, that caused the argument, that rubbed your spouse the wrong way, whatever. And that's what happens in marriage. And then B is your beliefs. When that thing happens, whatever it is, what are your thoughts about it? 9 times out of 10, they are not truth. They are not true thoughts. We all know that in the absence of information, we will make something up to fill in the gaps. And it's very rarely positive. So what is your belief when you experience that? She hates me. She doesn't like me. She doesn't want me to have fun. She doesn't want me to be me. My big one is she's trying to control me. That's my big one. You're trying to control me. You're not going to control me. I'll buck like a wild horse if I think she's trying to control me. All these beliefs go in, and this is where all that history is housed. All how we were raised, what we saw. That's where all these what was I talking about? Those expectations. That's where they all come from. They're all in this belief system. So then there's a C, A, B, C. A is the activating event. B is the beliefs. You like how I do that? Because I'm very systematic. Boom, boom, boom. A, B, C is right here underneath B. Then there's the consequences of those beliefs. What happens because I believe that? I get angry. I lash out. I disappear. Whatever the case may be, that there's a consequence to that.
Because we all have a go-to when we have conversations, when we argue, disagree, whatever. A lot of us have things that we are going to go to. And the way you handle things. He disappears, or he's going to go all in and go for it. I don't know. I tend to.
She gets mad for a while. Well, she has a couple of.
Yeah, I blow up at first and stuff.
Yeah, she can blow up.
But yeah, but we all have things that we tend to do during arguments or whatever. So I will lash out, and I do that too. I'll pull from a lot of other things and pull other things into it. And you did this and you did that from out of nowhere.
Her famous saying is, but you did this, but you did that, but you. So we have to look at those, and what, obviously we don't have time in this short time to go into it, because the mediation program is very in depth, and it's a whole day thing, but we dig into that. But you have to figure out, are those beliefs true? And where's that thought coming from?
Yeah, because it's that thing of stopping, because this is where we head down a wrong road when we're having an argument, is that belief system that you have tends to pull you down the same rutted roads that you've been down your whole life.
Absolutely.
With it. And there is a big thing to that about the cognitive thing and doing those neural pathways. And you can create new ones, but we tend to go down the same ones all the time. Because generally, arguments, you generally are going to argue about the same things all the time. And that's where you've got to come to a resolution with something, figure out those resolutions, because we keep just regurgitating the same arguments. So, but within that belief system, you've got to know that, okay, I'm starting to think he's a butthole or whatever, and he, is only thinking about himself, and it's all about him, blah, 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 kind of thing. It's that same path that I'm going down, that I've been going down for years. But you have to stop yourself within that and go, okay, is that true? Mm-hmm. Does he only care about himself? Okay, no, he makes my coffee every night. It's that going to truth about somebody instead of going to the negative belief that we have and those things that we go to.
But that negative belief is so much fun because it justifies our anger and it fuels our anger. It helps us to lash out at them.
Helps us feel right.
Right. But it's not good. It's not healthy. And it's not true. So we always have to go back to what is truth. And once we go back to what is truth, it's generally nowhere near what we conjured up in our mind. She laughed at me the other day because we had a disagreement about something, and of course, when I don't think none of y'all have been where I'm at, so y'all are all good. But I've done a lot of stuff I'm not proud of in life, so I can go down the negative road real quick. And I had us divorced. I already had our stuff split up. I was like, just went down this road all by myself. I'm like, who's going to get the dogs? I couldn't figure out who was going to get the 3 dogs. I was just stumped at that point. But, and of course we come back together and we talk, and after everything calmed down, and she's laughing at me. She's like, you what? The dog? You really got down to the dog part?
I'm like, seriously? You seriously went down that road? Are you kidding me?
So it's not true. So how are we going to handle this? When you let's look at the sink. If we're going to sink, that's where pride's set in, and then we isolate ourselves, and we can isolate ourselves and still be in the same room, as Lauri said. Mm-hmm. Isolate ain't like me. I want to go somewhere and don't be around nobody. But I got to move my little picture here because it's blocking some of my words. There we go. So when we're self-focused, that's where pride's at. That's where we start to become protection, where we start to, those walls built up, especially if we've got PTSD in relationships and stuff. We start to fear. Isolation, that's where deception happens. We're lying to ourselves. We're making up more of that story that's not there. And then, of course, negativity comes, and we start breaking down emotionally and relationally. And then, of course, it destroys the relationship. Whereas if we do what we're recommending today in the last few minutes of this, is we first unplug. When trouble hits, we unplug. And I'm going to walk you through this. And then we become self-aware. We hit the transformation point, then we go through breakthrough, and then we do things God's way. But keep it simple, unplug, renew, plug back in. And that's a difference in this, and it might be on one of the slides I'm going to show you, but just while I'm thinking about it, is there's a difference in unplugging and disappearing. Mm-hmm. Total two different things in unplugging. And I'll talk about here. Has anybody ever fact fought? Do you know what fact fighting is? That's when you're going at each other with, well, I did this and I did that. Well, you did this and did that. Well, no, but you did that. Oh, that wasn't true. That wasn't exactly how that went. You're fighting each other with facts. I know we got an attorney in the room, so I'm sure he's probably fact fought before, right? So, fact fighting or withdrawing. See, withdrawing is disappearing. You can still unplug, but you got to have an agreement as to when you're coming back together. Yeah. Somebody want to say something? No?
No.
Okay. I thought I heard a voice. So you still want to come back together. One of the things that I generally focus couples on is that Ephesians 6:12 is our struggles not against flesh and blood. Satan, the enemy, wants to mess up your marriage. And so often we look at the other person that we're in love with and we see them as the enemy, but the true enemy is sitting on the sidelines laughing at us. And it's kind of like, he's military, I'm military. We got, in the military, if you don't know who your enemy is and you just start fighting somebody, you're not going to win. And based on who your enemy is going to depend on how you fight them. So when we have a disagreement in the house or something happens, that individual, we start fighting them, and that's not even the person that is causing the conflict. So that changes your whole strategy. And then to go in line with what's the truth, we got to take captive every thought right there in 2 Corinthians 10:5. And I think Lauri does it too. I verbally say it out loud. Nope, I'm not believing that. That's not true. Stop it. Stop it right there. I'm not doing it. And I have to come back to truth. Fact fighting leads to failure and isolation, whereas the think model focus on your beliefs about the trouble and the conflict. So, and when we unplug, and we're talking about physically, and again, we go into a lot more detail in our all-day class, but unplugging is just for you to get away and talk to God about it and really sort through things.
It's to do that self, what do I do?
Reflection.
Yeah. Self-reflect, on, okay, was that me, and where am I coming from on this? Am I being selfish? Am I being, to this, to that, on whatever it is that we're having an argument about? Because the fact fighting thing that leads to failure and isolation, it's never healthy communication, ever. Because you're not going to get anywhere if I did this and you did that, and we're going nowhere. And I had a boss tell me one time, she asked me, I had been in some arguments with some other employees and stuff, and she was like, but Lauri, do you want to be happy or do you want to be right? Because you can be right, but you're probably not going to be happy because you're going to fact fight, and you're pointing out all this stuff, or you can let it go and you can be happy.
That's what I do. I mean, I'm right 90% of the time, but I just let it go. So anyway.
We all know that's definitely not true.
Secondly, we won't get through this. I want to be mindful of and honor everybody's time, be done on time. Number 2 is you go humble yourself and be self-aware. One of our biggest approaches is working on ourselves. And I'll get to the mirror thing, so don't jump ahead a minute because I know the tendency to do that here. But is we want to look at ourselves first. So many couples are pointing the finger at the other person and saying, well, you do this, you do that. And that's what I was going to say. In Dr. Pickering's book, he says that marriage is the great revealer, as in revealing. And so often we have heard couples say, and we have said it too, I didn't know that about you. Oh, now your true colors are coming out. Or this is happening, that is happening, you. But really, marriage teaches us more about ourselves. And it's what's coming out of us that we're finding out, but that's not pretty. So we will put it on the other person and say, you do this, you do that. How we respond to things in life tells us a lot about ourselves. And if somebody doesn't think that's true, just think, this is a rhetorical question, don't really answer it out loud. But think about there are things that happen in the home and there's things that happen in business out in the world. How many times has your response to your spouse been totally different than what it was to somebody out in the world? In other words, at work, somebody cusses you out, somebody does something to you at work, whatever, and you have to be kind to them. Yeah, I'm sorry you feel that way. I didn't understand. I didn't think I heard. I didn't know I came across that way. Even if inside you're ticked off and you're angry, but when your spouse, the one you love, does the same thing or something similar, Katie barred the doors, it's alone, and you're lashing out and you're going for the jugular. So marriage tells us who we really are. It tells us a lot about ourselves. So we have to become self-aware. And we're going back to this belief. What was your thoughts in the conflict? What emotions popped up? And what atmosphere did we create based on that? And based on our beliefs and our feelings and our response.
Because I've always loved this about our responses. We can either react to someone or we can respond to someone. When we react, it's not always good because, you know, it's a quick thing and we're just reacting to what somebody has said rather than thinking about it and responding to what someone has said.
Listen to understand. And then this is where the next step is to build intimacy with that other person. This is where we want to go through a transformation versus isolation. This is where you willingly surrender your magnifying glass and pick up the mirror for God to show you you. You know, so often we're looking at our spouse through a magnifying glass, picking them apart. And just the you, like Lauri said, the you do this, you do that, boom, 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 boom. And we come out with our list of fact fighting. Whereas God wants us to pick up a mirror and look at ourselves and own our part within the conflict. Because even if let's just say you're right, whatever right might be, we can control the outcome of that conversation if we're mature and we handle it God's way. And don't let the feelings and all the emotions get a hold of us.
And I think a lot of times we tend to, you may be right on some things. Like, I don't know, I'm pulling off of, occasionally I am that one that can keep a score on things. And I have to put the scorecard down and go, okay, does it really matter? 10 years from now, is it going to matter that you unloaded the dishwasher every day for 2 months and he didn't do it? You know, it's that thing of a lot of times we put things at a level and we put things and make them so important when they're not.
That's very true.
So it's learning to know that, roll with it, and it's really, in 5 years, is it really going to be that important?
Yeah. And note that last bullet, it's really not a bullet, but a statement. It says, isolation is the territory of the enemy and opens doors to his lies and deception. When we pull back for other than time to cool down, we want to cool down, get together with God, we want to unplug. But when we isolate, go to that other side, not talk to each other, and be on our own. In fact, I had a client not too terribly long ago who just said he'd rather just go live on his own and because he was making his spouse, you know, life so miserable and all that. And I'm like, that's exactly where Satan wants you, by yourself, because that's where he can just play in your brain and just wreak havoc and make up all these lies that you're right, she's wrong, da 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 da, and just really take you down to the pits all by yourself. I'll tell you, since Lauri and I adopted this, talk about it as soon as you can, nothing has progressed to as bad as what it was in our mind at the moment. It neutralizes it to talk about it.
It does. I think it does
It just
neutralize it because
neutralizes.
otherwise, you know how we do. It's just like when something happens at work, what do you start doing if you're going to get called in? You start playing the conversation that you're going to have with this other person over whatever the issue might be. We all do it. We all start going, okay, well, he's going to say this and I'm going to say this and he's going to say that. And that's what happens when we don't talk about it. All that stuff starts playing in our head of he did this and I remember he said that. Whereas if we talk about it, we're dealing with it and we're cutting all that off.
Exactly. You don't give Satan a foothold in your mind because you get everything on the table. And then negotiation. Now, I sometimes don't like the word negotiation, even though that's part of the material, because I feel like that's like, oh, I had to give something up, But it is. We'll play with the wording on that. But this is where you have breakthrough, and I put negative belief versus new belief on this one. Everything we go through in our other training is we have the negative belief, and then we have a new belief that we're trying to adopt. In so many situations, and I bet if y'all think back in your lives and y'all's relationships, there are points to where they're just stalemates, to where you're on both sides of the ring. One of you's on one side of the ring, and the other side, you're not even coming together to fight. You're just, I'm over here, she's over there. That doesn't work. You've got to come to the middle and find an agreement. I can't think of an example right now. I might think of one before I quit talking, but whatever that situation is, if we dig in, then that's just another place the devil can make a playground in our marriage and our relationship. We got to find a truce. We got to find something in the middle that works in order and move forward. So when you negotiate, when you come back and find that middle ground, I take personal offense to my spouse's beliefs. My spouse will never change. Things are hopeless. We're switching that to the positive, that new belief, where we're both on this journey, acknowledging our beliefs and learning how our thoughts control our feelings. So this is where the breakthroughs are possible when we come through and we start talking about things and we negotiate.
It is that thing of the verse earlier that the battle's not with flesh and blood. So that new belief is that acknowledging that we're in this together. We're not enemies in this. You're not my enemy. Let's work together because I want to have a relationship with you. And I want to have a good relationship with you, not just live in the same house and tolerate each other relationship. I'd like to have a great relationship. So acknowledging, the new belief and how our thoughts and my feeling about a certain thing, which may not be true, I've got to, that's where all that self-reflection comes in and decides on that. So.
And I generally had this conversation with men when I'm talking to them, and I'll just throw this in there, then we'll move on to the last two slides, is we are the spiritual leaders of the home. That's biblical, not negotiable. We are the spiritual leaders. And I believe we are the thermostats of our home. We set the temperature. And a lot of times we set that temperature to be very hot and very volatile because of the way we respond to things. And we need to take the high road. We need to take the God road and take charge of a lot of these negotiations. Maybe let some things go, but be the leader in this, because that's our role as spiritual leaders. So when you're negotiating that win-win, consider what you both desire, negotiate the resolution, be willing to sacrifice for one another, and work together for the health of your marriage. Remember that this is a journey, and one thing, if y'all can, on Laurie's note about not being flesh and blood, if y'all can look at it when you have an argument, Satan's attacking us, not you're attacking me. We're being attacked. Recognize that it's an outside force that's trying to cause a wedge. Not your disagreement may be between you two. You may be ticked off and tired of him squeezing the toothpaste in the middle, and you probably told him about 20 times, quit doing it and quit leaving toothpaste in the bottom of the sink, clean it out. That's a real life thing. But the anger and the lies and the stuff swirling around in your head, that's the enemy. So that's the reason you come together and talk about it. He just might be a lazy old guy and doesn't want to clean up. I don't know, but but you talk about it. And was that my last slide? I think that was my last slide. Oh, that is my last slide. Okay, I thought I had one more. So I know that's kind of a crash course, but hopefully that's helpful to help everybody understand that all these things are against us in our marriage, trying to break us up, trying to cause arguments, and little arguments become big arguments, and little things that, like Laurie said, doesn't matter, aren't that big of a deal, but they turn into things that can really ruin a relationship and a family, and we shouldn't. And I think if we use this unplug, have humility and become self-aware, the transformation, the breakthrough transformation, what's God telling you about you? What's the correct response? What's the correct action? What's the compromise? How can we come together and do a plan forward? That's really, it's going to start transforming your relationship to where that volatileness is not always there. It's just not. It's just not always there if you talk about it.
I'm going to share.
Marty's got one last story.
Yeah. On how we shared it with somebody, and I can't remember. I don't remember who we did it with, but when we were gone, anyway, we were walking and we got lost. And we were lost for a long time and having to walk for forever. I was getting madder and madder by the moment because I figured it was his fault that we were lost. And I had on boots and my feet were killing me. And so anyway, I was not talking to him the whole way while we were lost. We finally, after 30 minutes, get our way back to our hotel. And he was like, do you need to take your boots off? Do you need to do this? And he got back and he was like rubbing my feet and stuff and everything. And I was still mad about the whole situation. But then I had to stop and go, okay, Laura, you're being a little irritable about this situation. And it was no one's fault that we were lost. Was it irritating? Yes. And so I turned to him and I was like, all right, I'm sorry I was a witch about that whole situation. And I appreciated him being nice about it. And I said, you know what? I'm not going to let this ruin our evening. So it's that thing of self-aware, you know what I mean? When those things happen, to go, okay, I'm not going to let this jump in and ruin everything. So
yeah, that's true. So good. We ended on a nice positive note where I was a good guy. So talk about what a bad guy I was my whole life, and now we can end on a positive. That's a good place to stop. Thank y'all for joining us. We appreciate it. Hopefully, if you like this, we'll do it again and take on another topic.